Picture this. You have a friend named Dave. Dave is a homeowner, owns a fancy car, and has a decent paying job. By all appearances, Dave is doing pretty well in life. But then one day, Dave calls you up in a panic because he can't pay for his pizza delivery. Turns out all his money is tied up in his house, his car, and long-term investments. He's got plenty of wealth, but he doesn't have enough cash on hand to pay for small, everyday expenses. This, in a nutshell, is the difference between solvency and liquidity. Solvency is about the big picture. It's the ability to meet long-term financial obligations. If a person or a company is solvent, it means they own more than they owe. In other words, if they were to sell everything they own and use the money to pay off all their debts, they'd still have something left over. Solvency is like being the kind of person who has a house, a retirement fund, and a valuable baseball card collection, but might not have much cash in their wallet. A company that is solvent has assets that outweigh its liabilities. Assets can be things like property, equipment, or investments, while liabilities include loans and debts. If a company is solvent, it means that in the long run, it should be fine, even if it occasionally struggles to pay its short-term bills. Liquidity, on the other hand, is all about how quickly and easily you can access cash. It's like having money in your pocket when you need it. If solvency is about your overall wealth, liquidity is about whether you have enough money to buy groceries or pay rent on time. Highly liquid assets are those that can be converted into cash quickly. Think of things like cash itself, money in a checking account, or stocks that can be sold immediately. Less liquid assets include things like real estate, which takes time to sell, or a rare painting, which you might have to wait months or years to find a buyer for. We talked about this in our liquidity video. Imagine two people. Rich but struggling Rachel. Rachel owns 3 houses, has a massive retirement fund, and even owns a yacht, but she never keeps much cash in her bank account, and most of her money is locked up in assets she can't sell quickly. When she suddenly needs to pay for an emergency car repair, she panics because she doesn't have quick access to cash. She's solvent, but not liquid. Cash flow Carl. Carl doesn't own much. He rents his apartment, doesn't have any big investments, but he always keeps a lot of cash handy. If an emergency comes up, he can handle it right away. However, in the long run, Carl might struggle because he doesn't have assets that grow in value. He's liquid, but not solvent. Both solvency and liquidity are important whether you're an individual or a business. If a company is solvent but not liquid, it might have to scramble to pay its short-term bills, borrow money at high interest rates, or even go bankrupt despite having a lot of assets. If a company is liquid but not solvent, it might be able to pay its bills now, but could collapse in the long run because it doesn't have a strong financial foundation. Think about it like running a lemonade stand. If you have lots of lemons, sugar, and cups, assets, but no cash to buy ice when it gets hot, you're in trouble. On the other hand, if you have a wallet full of cash but no stand, no ingredients, and no long-term plan, you might make money today, but you won't be in business for long. Businesses use a few key strategies to balance solvency and liquidity, keeping cash reserves. Just like individuals should have an emergency fund, businesses should keep enough cash on hand to cover short-term needs. Managing debt wisely. Taking on too much debt can hurt solvency, while not having enough short-term financing can hurt liquidity. Balancing investments. Companies invest in assets that grow in value, but also need to keep some liquid assets for immediate expenses. Using financial ratios, businesses often use financial metrics like the current ratio, liquidity measure, and the debt-to-equity ratio, solvency measure, to make sure they're in good shape. What happens when things go wrong? If a business is solvent but not liquid, it may have to sell assets quickly, which can lead to losses. In extreme cases, companies that can't meet their short-term obligations go bankrupt, even if they technically own more than they owe. If a business is liquid but not solvent, it may survive for a while, but eventually it won't be able to sustain itself. It's like having enough cash to pay for your daily expenses, but no real plan for the future. Eventually you'll run out of resources. One important case of the interplay between solvency and liquidity was the Silicon Valley Bank case that we talked about in our bank run video. The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, SVB, in 2023 serves as a striking example of how solvency and liquidity issues can intertwine, leading to disastrous consequences. Understanding the nuances between these two financial concepts, solvency and liquidity, is crucial to grasp the bank's failure and the broader implications for the financial system. SVB was a major lender to tech startups and venture capital-backed firms. Its business model heavily relied on deposits from these companies, which experienced significant growth during the tech boom. However, SVB's investment decisions and liquidity management strategies exposed it to substantial financial risk. The bank heavily invested in long-term treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities, which seemed safe but proved to be a double-edged sword when interest rates rose rapidly. To understand SVB's downfall, we must differentiate between solvency and liquidity and examine how both played a role in its demise. Solvency refers to a bank's ability to meet its long-term obligations. At first glance, SVB appeared solvent. It held significant assets in government bonds and mortgage-backed securities, which are typically considered low-risk investments. However, as the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to combat inflation, the market value of these assets plummeted. Because SVB had locked in these securities at lower interest rates, it faced a situation where selling them would result in significant losses. While these securities would eventually mature at their full value, the immediate accounting losses made SVB's solvency appear weaker than it seemed on paper. Investors and depositors began to scrutinize the bank's financial health, worrying that its real asset values were far lower than reported. Liquidity, on the other hand, is about having enough cash on hand to meet short-term obligations. SVB's primary customers, tech startups, began withdrawing funds at a rapid pace due to a slowdown in venture capital funding. This sudden withdrawal demand put SVB in a precarious position, forcing it to sell its long-term securities at a steep loss to meet immediate liquidity needs. SVB's liquidity crunch was exacerbated when it announced that it had sold a portion of its bond portfolio at a loss and planned to raise additional capital. This spooked depositors and investors, leading to a classic bank run where customers withdrew deposits en masse. The rapid depletion of liquid assets meant SVB could no longer meet withdrawal demands, leading to regulatory intervention and ultimately the bank's collapse. SVB's case illustrates how liquidity issues can quickly transform into solvency concerns and vice versa. Initially, SVB was technically solvent, as its assets still had value if held to maturity. However, its lack of liquidity forced it to sell assets at a loss, thereby eroding its capital and making solvency concerns more apparent. Moreover, the perception of financial weakness can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. The moment depositors and investors lost confidence in SVB's ability to manage its liquidity, they rushed to withdraw funds, exacerbating the problem. This demonstrates that even solvent institutions can fail if they cannot maintain adequate liquidity during times of stress. Conclusion: solvency and liquidity are like two sides of the same financial coin. Solvency is about the long-term game, ensuring you have more assets than liabilities, while liquidity is about having enough cash on hand to pay for things when needed. You don't want to be like Dave, who owns a mansion but can't pay for a pizza. Instead, you want a balance: enough liquidity to handle day-to-day expenses and enough solvency to ensure long-term financial health. Whether you're managing your own finances or running a business, keeping an eye on both will help you avoid financial headaches down the road. Stay tuned, money enthusiasts.